Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories. What's it going, Ed? How's it going?
About as good as your layup there. Um, just some quick news notes about some regional stuff. Really quick, Lights Out Championship 12 that airs on Spectation Sports this Saturday. If you folks are anybody that subscribes or watches that the main event with Austin Bashi versus Ricky Bandejas, it's the Bashi is still fighting as of right now, but Ricky Bandejas is not on the card anymore. His management posted that he withdrew. I don't know what the reason is, but so folks that are following the young Bashi's career, I interviewed him last week. I'm actually working on a piece on him now based on that interview, and obviously it's a little harder to write when I talked to him Friday and then he loses his opponent on Monday, Tuesday, or whenever it was. So it was good. It would have been a good test for him, but he still if he gets the win, he'd be 10-0 undefeated, and it'd be high time the UFC or someone start calling him. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into this week's episode. Speaking of Friday, Bellator 297. I don't know, man. I don't know how you felt about it, how you observed the card. I actually I thought the card was great, even though pretty much all my picks were wrong. But like with the exception of the performance of Vadim Nemkov, I mean, on your end, I think you picked Vadim to win. But I feel like maybe Yoel Romero needs to either hang up the gloves or talk to a sports psychologist.
Yeah, no, it was a fun card. Main card was good. But like you said, yeah, picks didn't go that well. I did pick Nemkov. I feel like there's a partially Romero hung up the gloves a little while ago.
Hmm.
That's why he's kind of he's had some victories in Bellator, but he kind of coasted to a couple ones where he beat guys late and didn't really have the craziest fights. That goes back to his last couple in the UFC too. But yeah, I mean Nemkov's great. I think he's solidified himself as a really top candidate for number one light heavyweight
Hmm.
in the world. Um, Obviously, he's the
It
number one in
just
Bellator, but
Yeah, he just made the
you know,
pound for pound list there too.
yeah. So, I mean, I think he's everything about him seems to be good right now. 17-2. Um, it's nice to see Fedor coaching and having a good time with that, and having some success with a few of his fighters, and Nemkov leading the stable right now.
How'd you feel seeing? I've never seen. I mean, folks that have watched Fedor, they're used to the quiet, dangerous guy. Watching him yell, actually be a corner man and being emotional and stuff. That was a little bit. I remember when I was watching it, I was just like, "Is that Fedor?" Just because of how animated and vocal he was.
No, that's great, and you see that, and it's a whole nother side to somebody, and can show
Hmm.
kind of how you know certain people turn into certain things when they were fighters, and
Hmm.
he was, some people get wild and crazy, and he was just, he obviously gained his inner strength through, you know, peacefulness and at least publicly, and being respectful and just really focused. So
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine if you're Nemkov, you're a Russian fighter, and you're being trained under Fedor. There's got to be a level. I mean, that's the equivalent of, I don't even know what it would be in the U.S. But for training under somebody. But I mean, he's done well from Ryzen to now Bellator. He's had a couple setbacks, but always rebounded and really really outclassed Romero in this fight. So
Yeah, I mean, he literally, I mean, especially with all the spinning techniques and the activity and the multiple kicking and punching combinations, I thought it was definitely like it was almost otherworldly for to see men that big move like that. It always makes me think about when Ryan Bader was was that warm up clip I like to share every time he fights when he's doing the wrestling drill. Like the guy's such a giant, and to see them move around that quickly, it's like watching those videos of like bears fight or moose fight on like it's something you don't like. You're used to them standing around or walking. You don't expect quick movement and explosiveness out of creatures that size, but it was definitely a good fight. The only thing I want to say about Romero is that I feel like for the little bit of action when he did something to kind of like it looked like he was trying to actually win. He did put Nemkov in trouble. The bad part of it is it was only like 3 times in the entire 5 rounds. So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah,
I
he did end
comment
the fight
about
up on top. I mean,
yeah.
he was, there was some moments where he had flashes,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I think Nemkov proved to be the superior fighter at this point in their careers.
Yeah.
Speaking of animals that aren't so big but move really, really quick, I think Sergio Pettis kind of I didn't really take that into account. There,
Mhm.
we don't sit here and really break down fights per se, um, aside from some of your uh, jujitsu stuff. But it just didn't even cross my mind. I thought Pitbull would go in there and be able to, influence the way the
Yeah.
fight goes, and the speed of Sergio Pettis
Yeah.
was something that I didn't account for.
Yeah, no, I know it's one thing. Well, before I even comment on that, I just wanted one last thought on the light heavyweight bout. The thing about Romero, like I'm starting to get, I find myself starting to get um kind of like the what's the word I'm looking for? It's like deja vu. It's like deja vu when just before Crow Cop hung up his gloves. Like I remember the Crow Cop of his prime with the combos he threw and how much more active he is versus towards the end of his career where he's kind of just like looking to land the one, what he was known for, the one heavy strike. I'm starting to see that with Romero, and I think that's just signs of it comes with the territory of fighting as long as these guys have fought. But back to the bantamweight fight, you know, I had talked about one thing Pitbull did that impressed me was because the night before that image of him, and I know I shared it with you after we had just finished recording because they weighed in on Thursday, and we had just finished recording on a Wednesday, and I shared that image with you that everybody was saw of him cutting down to 135, and I definitely got the TJ Dillashaw flyweight vibes, like it just didn't look good. But then come when he comes to weigh in, it looked like he was already hydrating or rehydrating better. And then when they did the ceremonial face off, which is not a couple hours after the actual weigh-ins, um, it was almost like I thought Pettis was going to be in trouble, because he had this seemingly bigger dude coming in to fight him, and then like you said, it was crazy. It was just I tweeted something that he was doing. It was weird because he was almost like he was patient enough to whether like if you come at Pitbull with the same energy he comes at you, he's gonna get you, whether by submission or knockout. But if you don't match that energy, if you do the opposite of what he wants to do, which is what Pettis did, it was almost like Pettis was literally like making him fight himself more than and he just capitalizing on the holes and the mistakes. It was that kid has really come into evolved into some like his own. Everyone used to call him, and I know we've said this before in other episodes of the podcast when we talked about, especially when he won the title. Like we used to say, oh, it's it's Anthony Pettis' brother, but no, Sergio Pettis is the bantamweight champion, and he's literally becoming his own fight. This is already 2 time defending the title, and with the exception of, I mean, Horiguchi, he even admits he almost lost, but this one, talk about somebody that did their homework, man.
No, great game plan, great skill put on display.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a master. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if that goes down as his greatest performance of his career when everything's said and done. That might be the one you go, hey, that's the fight you want to check out because
yeah,
I mean, he did everything right and beat a beat a champ and
mm,
2 divisions higher than him. I mean,
mm-hmm.
that's just the fight itself. The fact that the UFC put, or not the UFC, that Bellator put on the fight itself really shows
Yeah,
that because you don't get that opportunity. We can't we want to talk about historically. That's kind of like the only time it's ever happened. I mean, among
mm-hmm.
these big organizations. I do believe Juan Archuleta at one point was a 3 division champion for King of the Cage,
Hmm.
but that's, you know, a couple stories down the elevator from
Hmm.
Bellator and the UFC certainly. So great fight though, great. I mean, just amazing, amazing,
Yeah.
really.
I was a
Um,
little worried, like at the end, because like he lost, when Pitbull lost, and he sat there, kneeling with his hands on his lap and just kind of his eyes closed. I was like, I'm like, is he gonna retire right now or something? Like I was actually worried about that, but he was already back training. His brother posted on social media that he was already back training the following Monday just to get healthy. And when they asked Scott Coker in the post event press conference, what do you want to see from him next? And he was just like, he just picked up an L, so let him go home and soak that in, and then he'll let me know. But it's definitely not. We haven't seen the last of Pitbull. I mean, kudos to trying, dude. And I mean, those 3 days before the actual fight, it just got more interesting and interesting watching him go from scarily small to rehydrating to the point that I was like, oh my god, he might kill Pettis when they fight, and then Pettis comes out and does some wizardry that he does, like whatever. Like Coker gave a lot of credit to Rufus too, his coach, because he calls him the master tactician, because apparently he helps his guys. Obviously, he's produced now two champions that we know about with the brothers, and I forget who else fights out of that gym that probably picked up straps from other places. But that's definitely a feather in his cap too. If I mean, for folks that want to like join gyms and stuff, he's starting to get himself up there with all Team Elevation, Jackson Wink, and all those other popular gyms. So definitely a great fight. I mean, the overall card, I should have gone to that event. You know, I did my best coverage remotely as I could, but it definitely would have been better had I been there in person. Maybe next time, but shout out to Bellator for putting on such a great show. They definitely know how to take the circus to town for wherever they go.
Yeah, I mean, also picking up big wins that night was Corey Anderson, a split decision over
Mhm.
uh, Phil Davis. I called a
Pretty
split
much, yeah,
decision,
yeah,
so I wasn't surprised. I was surprised Phil Davis was on the other side of it. First time
yeah.
since his fight against
Hmm.
the debuting Bader, that he was on the wrong side of a split decision at Bellator 180, New York City. Um, Also, Daniel James goes down, gets pretty much controlled on the ground by
Yeah,
Sarikam. Happens. Uh, Not the most exciting fight of the night on that end. Um, and some of the prelims, lots of finishes. So
yeah.
lots of good action that night. Um,
I do have to say, and again, this is not Bellator's fault. This was, I guess that's just how things go in Chicago. If folks probably remember, there was like an almost hour delay. They had a stacked prelim card. Our boy Bobby Nash was supposed to fight on those prelims. Turned into he I don't know why. I guess because he was like going to be one of the ending prelims, which is kind of like being the top of the hour. If you're watching UFC, the broadcast into the pay per view type of deal. Um, but they had to put him on the post limbs because of the delay, and I feel like that might have added to why he lost. Because if you've ever competed in any sort of combat sport thing, especially like with the grappling competitions, for guys that, especially if he's coming back after being away for a while. I know it's not something he's not used to, but the waiting around, that's why I did Grappler's Quest way back when in 2005, 2006. And the reason why I didn't do more grappling competitions because I just can't fucking stand the waiting around. I can't fucking stand it. It drives me crazy to the point that like, that's what separates them from the hobbyists like myself, because they have the drive to they'll wait around and they'll wait until midnight like Bobby Nash did, and still try to fight and almost win like he did, and then get caught. And so it's just the delay was because of and I know most commissions, they want like two ambulances on site. That way, if one is away, there's still one there so the show can keep going on and they can go, back and forth or whatever. And they were waiting on an ambulance. But the funny thing was there was like two fire trucks there just before they opened the doors for people. And Amy Kaplan posted that, and apparently, I don't know what the reasoning behind it was, but hey, it's what do they say? This saying in live TV, folks, like anything can happen. So,
I think they have to have two ambulances because they need to have one for each fighter.
mm,
If things go get down and dirty,
yeah,
I've experienced those at live events where usually when I tuned in, because I tuned in a little late, a couple prelims in when I messaged
hmm
you. When I tuned in, I had assumed somebody had gotten injured badly or something
oh
had gone down where the EMTs had to
yeah, it was
give
50
special care.
minutes.
But that's a long time, and
Yeah,
um,
you could.
some of the people I've met, and some of the fighters over the years for the Bellator events out here, they have a lot of post limbs, and a lot
hmm
of times they don't know if they're going to be a pre or post limb. It just kind of depends. So that's a shame that that's a big gap. To think you're going to be going on stage in 45 minutes and that turns into 4 hours
Yeah.
is definitely something that's got to be hard to focus on. Not to make
Mm.
an excuse for the loss from my perspective, but I could see why that would be could be frustration and something that we can talk about that perhaps the fighters can't bring up because they'll be roasted for making excuses. But we
Yeah.
can certainly point that out.
hmm
Um, so that was last Friday. Your great co-host had a brain fart, misread the dates for BKFC. So the good news for everybody is that Palomino Lily is this Friday, not last Friday. I sat around waiting on my app for that to pop up, and that didn't pop up, and had to pull up Tapology. I was looking for somebody to blame. I was going to go after Nolan King or somebody. I was like, somebody had to put the wrong date, but it appears that it was just me. So that BKFC is this Friday.
It's probably
Lil
why no one heard anything about it.
Yeah, yep.
But it's
Palomino
kind of good
Lily.
though. It's kind of good though because like there's a lot going on. Like I feel
Yeah,
like
no, it
now,
works. It works out. The
yeah.
fight's still this week. I like I said, I have now another 4 days to
So
get
it's this
excited for
Friday.
this Friday night. Yes.
So yeah, that's actually better because now because there was an LFA event, there was CFFC, the Bellator. Like last Friday, it would have been this is actually better for BKFC
For
and
BKFC, their only
yeah.
competition that I know of that is also on this Friday is the One Championship on Prime. Um, the heavyweight title finally seems to get settled out.
Is that this Friday? I'm so
Malakan.
used.
Let me check the date. Let me double check. Yes, Friday, June 23rd. Um, so that is
Well, the TBA because it's Bular, right?
yes. So you don't know if it actually will end up
Yeah.
fighting, um,
Like I'll
but
believe it when Bular when they say into this corner and that's when I'll believe it.
okay, maybe it's not a prime card. It might. It says it's broadcast on YouTube, according to. So this might just be one of the early morning
Yeah,
cards.
yeah. Either way,
Okay, I thought I misunderstood that again. It's a good thing I checked on that. Card is weird though. First fight's an MMA fight, then there's like 12 Muay Thai fights, and then the main event
hey,
is the
that's
heavyweight
how one
title.
does things, man.
So um,
Sometimes you get a cage, sometimes you get a ring.
yeah, so this looks like 8:30 Eastern time on Friday morning. So any of those that are lucky enough to be free on their Friday mornings, Muay Thai certainly looks interesting, and Malkin undefeated heavyweight 12-0, coming off of his win over DeRitter. Uh, Against Bular, who was the champion forever. But I don't think anybody was, you know, uh, I don't think Biden was
Yeah,
present the
no,
last time he fought.
no,
Uh,
nobody's buying Bular T-shirts and shit like that. He's not going to be on the cover of any video games.
no, no, and if things go Malkin's way this Friday, you might not see it even on
Hey,
one championship
judging
any
by the way,
longer.
yeah, judging by the way that dude. If you didn't see that DeRitter fight, Malikan and DeRitter, I mean, oh my god, the first few punches he threw, I was like, oh my god, I was like, what's his name when Apollo Creed dies in Rocky Four? I was like, get
No.
him out of there. but
uh,
but speaking of our boy, your Trevor Wells and Dan Henderson's gym. We've had quite a few fighters from Dan Henderson's gym come on the podcast and talk about Trevor Wells. He had his Ultimate Fighter fight last night on Tough this season of Tough. Didn't go his way, but It was nice to see your neck of the woods, and the gym get featured, and I thought it was pretty cool. Um, he lost, but he didn't lose
Yeah,
badly.
best fight of the season so far.
Hmm.
In a normal 3 round fight, you never know how the third round would go. He did lose both rounds. First round was close. Second round, he got wrestled down and fighting Timur Valiev, who was when I saw the list of names, instantly one of the
Yeah.
favorites. But yeah, I mean, so far the veterans are 4-0. Um, which is not a huge surprise to me. I
Hmm.
feel like the guys that are trying to get there are the guys that are just trying to be the guys that they're fighting. You know what I mean? Like, um, in a sense, because this is going to come off disrespectful, but um, if there was an Anderson Silva in that group, they probably would know it already.
Mm.
Just, you know what I mean? Like, nowadays it's not this is not the old days of tough where everybody knows who everybody is, everybody has video of
Mm.
everybody fighting.
Yeah.
You're not pulling some guy out of a track, you're not surprising anybody anymore. These guys have all fought, whether it's through Combate or Bellator or Titan or CFFC, or you know
Mhm.
what I mean, like these guys have been fought on where people have been able to see them fight. So I do think that that's where the tough idea kind of ran its course, because with that in the Contender Series, it's like we know who these you are. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's just different. It's so much weird. It's so, back in the day, you would want to see the fight because you're like, okay, does this guy qualify for the UFC in a sense? Where now it's like,
Mhm.
well, saw him fight 13 times in LFA and he went 12-1, so he damn sure is good enough
Yeah.
to be in the UFC with the parameters that it takes to be in the UFC nowadays.
Yeah.
This isn't when you had a 50-man roster. There's 500 fighters on roster. So,
Yeah.
um,
And
you
and
know,
it's funny because like when Contender Series is ramping up, that's when they start doing this stuff to so they start letting fighters go so they can make room for the new guys. I mean, the UFC is a machine right now of just cycling through fighters, and if you don't become a star or a worker in your time there, then you're out. But it's just crazy how I don't know, man. I also I kind of feel, because now Team McGregor is 0-3, 0-4,
0-4, I believe.
0-4, and I kind of feel like, I mean, if you want to look at the coaching side of things and see who's more invested, it's obvious that Michael Chandler seems to be the more invested coach. McGregor's bringing in all these random dudes, to kind of like it's almost like for this reality show part of it. Like we're seeing him sell toys, buy kids toys, and all the other stuff that we're seeing him do. And now with the, I mean, I think we deep down we all know that this USADA nonsense about him missing the date or whatever is just to add to the drama to sell tickets. It's like him with Mayweather with the 10-ounce gloves or whatever. I mean, we're acting like he's not going to get the exemption that Farah Hanoun
See,
asked
I don't
about
I don't think he's
months
going
ago.
to. I don't think he's going to fight. I think the UFC
Mm,
would give an exemption, but I don't think he wants to fight anymore. I
hmm,
don't. I don't. I don't. He's not. He doesn't do anything. I mean, he's got another allegation. He doesn't do anything that which would lead you to believe that he's not just a
hmm,
retired fighter going around the world, kind of on like a look at me tour. I mean,
hmm.
that's really what it seems like to me, because nothing is being taken seriously. I mean, the UFC selling wolf tickets. They said the fight would be announced during tough, like something was already recorded. Well, and if they give an exemption, I'm sorry, but you want to put another nail in the in your sport. I mean,
Hmm.
how does that how does that not get acknowledged? I mean, and perhaps not a single member of media will sit there and be,
Well, you got to look at
you know,
who's doing media these
they'll
days
be
for
drooling
that.
over McGregor coming back. Maybe they won't ask about
Yeah,
questions, but
they'll
I
have
mean,
Robbie Barstool fucking blowing McGregor in
I
in
mean,
front of the T-Mobile
I
Arena.
believe we've known they've given one exemption to somebody, right? Brock Lesnar for UFC 200, and he
Mm.
popped for steroids. Like, what are we like? You're betting 1,000 when it comes to your exemptions. I mean,
Yeah,
like, so what are we doing here? But I don't. I get the impression he's not going to fight. And I was kind of. I know it sounds weird, but I don't know if you watched the last episode, the whole episode, but he was talking to Wonder Boy, and he got it, and he asked Wonder Boy how his weight was.
yeah, I did
And
see
part of
that.
me started wondering, like, is Wonder Boy his replacement?
Mm.
Like, is McGregor in the back of his mind checking with these guys to find out, kind of like, okay, like when I back out, I can just have Wonder Boy fight Chandler at
Mhm.
170. Still can happen, because the fight's going to be at 170. You know what I mean? Like, so I just, it didn't, I don't think he's showing up that often. I bet you when this is all said and done, we find out he showed up like for a taping day, and he walked into the fights in his suit, and he was there for like all of like 40, 15 hours for the entire season
Mm.
or something like that. I bet you that ends up coming out, because the way the guys look at him, the way that everything's going on, it just seems so bizarre. His whole
Mm.
thing about, I mean, I can't even get into it, but he just seems
Mm.
like he's just out of his mind, looped out of his mind, um, nonstop. And you know, he broke his leg severely. That's why he dropped out of the testing so that he could take steroids to heal his leg. And steroids are used to heal your leg when you break your leg in half. That's perfectly, for me and you, that would be a perfectly great thing to happen. It would be a miracle drug for us. They would demand we take it, but for our leg to heal. But that's what's happened, and
Mm.
either he's not healing properly, or he just doesn't have that drive anymore. But I just don't see it. I don't.
Mm.
I don't. I don't. I don't see it. Well, I mean, where's he's not even really smack talking. We're not getting like a back and forth with
Yeah,
Chandler.
like we got a
Like,
lot of highlights before the show started, and then now we're not really getting much else.
there's
Yeah.
like nothing. Chandler's kind of on Twitter going, "Where are you at?" Like, we're not getting a "Hey, shut your mouth," and it seems really, there just doesn't seem to be a lot there this time. And I think McGregor, like I said, is kind of on a final look at me tour, as
Mm.
far as trying to gain or think honor things. I think if anything, we see him in about a year and he fights Nate Diaz. I think he's waiting for
Mhm.
Nate Diaz and Logan Paul fight, or a Jake Paul fight, because if Diaz can win that fight, and even though it's a boxing match, I
Mhm.
think that McGregor realizes what that'll do still to boost Diaz's stock. And
Mm.
then a trilogy match with, let's say, next July, when he's actually able, he gets the full healing of his, I mean, his leg was broken in half. I mean, where you were talking a
Yeah.
serious leg injury. So
Yeah.
I just think that that's more likely. I don't I The UFC would be pushing. I mean, we're at the end of December anyway. Not even a normal big pay-per-view month in the last 10 years. I
Mhm.
mean, you got to go back to like UFC 92 before there was like a big, end of December.
Mhm.
There has been a few, the
Mhm.
Usman don't get me wrong, but it doesn't scream. When you think UFC, you think like March, you think uh July, and you think like November in New York. Like, those are kind of
Mhm.
like your big fight weekends historically. And I just think it's interesting. So we shall see. But they do have a nice UFC does have a decent card this Saturday on ABC. Looks like 12 p.m. midday noontime start for those on your side of the coast, and a 9 a.m.
Yeah.
start for people over here.
Hey, I don't mind. I don't mind the. I honestly don't mind these early cards. Especially being on the East Coast. But it is the main card is UFC on ABC 5, so it's going to be on ABC, also on ESPN Plus, obviously, and the prelims 11:30 a.m. actually start. The reason why I kind of wanted to talk about this card and look at it is because someone's career that I've been following since before he even got into the UFC, right here, Mr. Trevor Peak, is fighting. I think this is another last minute replacement for him. They
It
don't
is.
have it in, obviously when they have the silhouette with the, but this guy has been on a tear in his whole career. I mean, he's it's funny. Alex Behunin just did today a humanizing athletes. He did the whole thing he does on Twitter, and he spoke to him and posted it. And they asked Trevor Peak, who are your favorite fighters, and he was like Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I think when last time he fought, I called him. I was like, he's like the second coming of Justin Gaethje in the UFC. Oddly enough, they're in the same division. I mean, a fight between them two would definitely. Um, I'm glad this is on regular ESPN and ESPN Plus, because I think more eyeballs are going to get on them. But that's literally the fight that I'm looking forward to the most I mean, obviously the main event, and let's scroll through the card really quickly here. Um, Neil Magny and Phil Roa. I like that fight a lot too.
Yeah, the Tabitha Ricci, Jillian Robertson fight, good
Mm-hmm.
women's MMA match, evenly on the odds too. Kind of, it surprises me that you put like a Magny on them. I feel like a slap in the face to put Magny on the prelims on one of
Mm-hmm.
these fight night cards. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
I
I
agree.
don't. I mean, it's same thing with like Jim Miller. Like you put him on the card then. Like
Mm-hmm.
these guys have bailed you out a lot of times, and
Yeah, that's for
and
sure.
you know what I mean? I just think but maybe the main event on a prelim is just as good as, the opening fight on a main card when you're talking, exposure and stuff. So who knows? But yeah, Hebos Macy Barber co-main event.
Mm-hmm.
That should be a fun fight.
Yeah, that's
Um,
actually one that I'm a little. Why do they have them both at number 11? The UFC, I swear to God. The other day, Aaron Brunstetter from TSN was like, "Oh, he posted a screenshot of like how because after Amanda Nunes thing, he was like, oh, retired. He's like, oh, they still have her at featherweight, and that he posted that like at 8 a.m. my time in the
uh,
morning, and then when I looked at it, like it was like noonish. I was like, yeah, it looks like they've caught themselves and fixed it. And I was gonna write to him. I'm like, they do a lot of shenanigans and screwing up over there, but I mean, and I was gonna say it's a running gag on this podcast because every time we bring up the UFC.com screenshots, we always find something that makes us laugh, like we just did now. But I do like this fight a lot. I don't know. I can't even make a pick for it because this is the equivalent of Corey Anderson and Phil Davis for me. You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
yeah, I feel like if they're both like on their strongest possible game, I think Macy
mm-hmm,
Barber has more uh, ways to win the fight.
mm-hmm,
But she also has had some fights where you kind of just like, what exactly are we going to get out of her? So, I mean, I think her last fight, if I recall, she fought Andrea Lee,
mm-hmm,
and I didn't think she won the fight. Yep, despite picking up the decision. So, um, a good fight. I mean, if Hebus is able to kind of fight off the early attack from Barber, I think she
mm-hmm.
eventually might land something really hard, maybe a body kick or something that turns the momentum of the fight. But definitely a good fight. The other thing about this event that's nice is it's not in the Apex. They're back to Jacksonville,
Mm-hmm.
so they're going to have a live crowd. Um, First time back there since Jacksonville welcomed back the uh, sports crowds post COVID.
I wonder
Um,
why a lot of these fights are missing the odds. They usually fill them up with all the odds for everybody by this point. Usually when we record on the midweek Wednesday of fight week, so that's weird to me.
yeah, it is low, but they also have two silhouettes.
Sadiq Youssef calls out those the Michael Bisping silhouettes. When they put no fighter there, I think that's pretty funny. When he does his I forget what he calls the breakdowns on his YouTube channel, but if you've never seen them, it's definitely worth watching because they're hilarious. I mean, this
uh,
main event, man, I feel like Emmett's always that guy that kind of like he always gets he's like right there, and then something happens, and I don't know how to feel about this fight either. Like it's just hard for me. They have Emmett as the underdog, which I think plus 270 is
Big
fair.
underdog.
Yeah.
Big underdog. I think Tapuria wins. Tapuria's undefeated, 13-0. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's too violent. I think he'll hurt Emmett. I think Emmett might have peaked out. I think him getting to that
Yeah.
title fight was kind of like the maximizing of his God-given abilities. And I think that he might get punished a little bit in this fight. And we'll find out. But at the same time, if Tapuria does that, he becomes 14-0 and a
Mm-hmm.
serious contender in the division.
It's funny Kevin Nichols is mentioning Macy Barbers because it's the first thing I thought about when looking at that matchup. I mean, so he says Barber has an outstanding record since returning from the ACL tear in 2020. Um, that's something that I think speaks to. That's one thing in that matchup between her and Rebus that I think speaks to her. I feel like when it comes down to toughness, um, that's where Barber has the edge. Even when she got that injury, she was still fighting, on one leg. She finished the fight, so I think that's one thing that folks, are probably not taking into account for her. They have her as a plus 170 underdog, so I feel like that might be. I mean, so plus 170. I don't like to put money on anything that's plus 200 or less than plus 200, but I mean, if you're trying to do like a parlay or something, maybe her and another fighter would get you some money. Um, they have her winning more by TKO, KO, TKO than Rebus. I don't know, man. That's a tough one to call.
Yeah, I mean the bets that the fight goes to a decision.
Hmm.
You know, big chunk of their fights have both gone to decision since they've
Hmm.
uh, been in the UFC. But yeah, no, I think it's a good fight. I mean, Barber looking at her is 4-1 since the injury suffered when she fought Roxanne Modafari.
Hmm.
Um, but that one, you know, the loss was a decision loss to the current champ Alexa Grasso. So Kevin definitely brings a good point. You know, despite it being a couple split decisions and a couple other
Hmm.
decisions, she's squeaking it out. So you know, it's gonna be interesting. I think it's a good fun fight, and you know, when we complain a lot, I like to point out the fights that you know
Hmm.
that I think are are fun and
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and not for nothing, the cards that usually are under the radar. Not that this one is, but like when the UFC still kind of has these under the radar cards that when folks kind of knock it, especially when it's fun on social media to knock a card, those cards turn out to be fun. That still holds true. So, we still got to give credit and some time and attention to the fighters, even if the organization has become a giant corporate money trap or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's definitely and ABC is always good because everybody can watch it. So
yeah, a lot of action fights, some up and coming guys, some guys who put on some wars. Onama coming off the uh, loss to Landwehr out here in San Diego in a fight of the year
mm,
nominee. You know, so um, I good morning of fights. I mean, I'm like you said, I'm happy to see it's early in the day, so don't kind of got to
yeah,
dedicate your entire
I'll be
evening.
recording it because usually the 11:30 is when I go to training on Saturdays. But it'll be nice to come home and get done my errands, and then I mean we got a lot of rain on the East Coast coming for the next like fucking 5 days, so it'll be a nice rainy Saturday of fights for me.
Nice. Yeah, it'll probably be 100 degrees here, so uh, it's 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 that time of year.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so one championship Friday morning, BKFC Friday night, and then UFC again Saturday morning. Um, should be fun and lots of action. Fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. And as always, as mentioned earlier, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories. Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for commenting, as usual, Kevin. And have a good night.
I just want before we go, I want to read a quote. So, our friend Nyla, I hope I'm not messing up her name. She said something that I think applies to like MMA Twitter. The men that are self-styled experts are the absolute worst. Stay in your lane. I feel like that's how a good quote to close the show on. So stay in your lane. Stop trying to be a fucking expert on everything. All right. Peace, everybody.
There it is. Have